inform my decision. Take my hand. Lord, I need your dear guidance and direction now more than ever. Enlarge me, my ministry. Build my tent. Lord, turn my focus outward that I might serve you by serving others. Let me share freely the comfort with which I have been comforted. Fuel my friendships. I need friends. Lord, thank you for being a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Help me to imitate the same self-sacrifice and love you so beautifully model, that I might gain a friend by showing myself friendly. Our scripture today is on the back of your cards, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3 through 5. And it reads, "Blessed be God, even the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them which are in trouble by the comfort wherewith we ourselves are comforted of God. For as the sufferings of Christ abound in us, so our consolation also abounded by Christ." God's word for God's people. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, we will have our purpose, Carmen West, Ma West, sorry.
Hello. Using John 14, verse 18 as this guide, which reads, "I will not leave you comfortless, I will come to you." The journey ministry of St. Stephen AME Church comes with a spirit of empathy and compassion as a source of support for the grieving members of the church. This ministry, created in 2018 under the leadership of Reverend Dr. David Green, offers comfort and guidance, helping families manage the daunting and confusing tasks, and walks families through everything from spiritual and emotional health to handling their loved ones' affairs to planning for the future. Specifically, with discretion, we provide a ministry of presence, assists with planning the funeral, spiritual support, grief counseling, ongoing support, and community outreach. In addition, a survival guide is provided which describes events to occur after one's passing. As our pastor, Reverend Jared Washington, says, "Let us walk with you during your period of grief, no matter how long it may be. We are here to offer you and your family comfort, support, and compassion in your time of need." Thank you.
Thank you, Sister West. Yes. Okay, so now we are going to introduce our guests for this time. They are coming from Baptist Health. The last time they were with us, we had such a wonderful, wonderful time. And they have been some different people. However, they were from the same Baptist Health. So I'm going to introduce to you, first of all, Mr. Joel Layton. He's the lead chaplain at Baptist Health. Joel Layton joined Baptist Health in 2022 and served as lead chaplain for the Baptist MD Anderson Cancer Center. He completed his residency in clinical pastoral education at Baptist Medical Center, Jacksonville, and Baptist MD Anderson Cancer Center. Joel provides spiritual care to patients, families, and staff in outpatient and inpatient settings. Born and raised in North Carolina, Joel graduated from the University of Florida with a Bachelor of Health Science and received his Master of Divinity from Gordon Well Theological Seminary. For 9 years, Joel wore many hats as a staff member for a local interdenominational faith community. He worked in student and young adult ministry and organized local community service projects. Joel is an active member of the River City Church. He is well married and enjoys spending time with family, exploring nature, and watching college football. So we present to you Mr. Joel Layton.
Thank you so much. Okay, I just want to say, first of all, good afternoon. Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here with you today. As you heard, I'm a chaplain at Baptist MD Anderson Cancer Center. So I support patients from all walks of life and at every step of their journey or their loved one's journey through cancer treatment. When I think about grief, I think about everything that we feel, think, and experience on the inside in response to the loss of something or someone that's important to us. Notice I said something. We grieve when we lose things too. For many of our patients, that may be their health. If they receive a cancer diagnosis, that may be their future story, their future plans, ambitions, and dreams. When we lose something or someone important to us, we embark on a journey of grief. So I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. I think there's a danger in receiving a wonderful introduction, hearing about titles, degrees from the University of Florida. That's a personal point of contention with my friend here, Marcus. Because you may think of us as somehow experts on grief. And I would contend that you are the expert on your grief. And it's our job to learn, to come beside, to walk beside, and to support you. So thank you so much for having us here. I'm eager to learn about you and your stories. I'm eager to hear your questions, that we can listen to them and walk with you together. So thank you very much for having me. I'm just going to turn it over to Marcus for a moment. Do you want me to come back and sit down, Marcus, or? Oh, yeah, okay.
All right, thank you so much. I'd like to introduce our next participant, Marcus Brown. He's a supervisor at Baptist Health as well. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, Marcus earned a Bachelor of Arts in English and History from the University of North Florida and a Master of Divinity from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary in Jacksonville, Florida. Marcus is ordained as a minister in the Kojic Church of God in Christ and holds ecclesiastical endorsements by the Evangelical Church Alliance. After having ministered in the Church of God in Christ from 2008 to 2014, Marcus began the residency program at Baptist Health. He served as a resident chaplain at Baptist Downtown from August of 2024 through August of 2015. Following residency, he was named the neurological chaplain and later the cardiology chaplain. A member of kingdom-minded associations of churches, Marcus serves his community in clothing drives and food giveaways opportunities throughout the year. He coordinates and works with the homeless ministry in his organization. Marcus is board certified through the Association of Professional Chaplains and a bereavement facilitator through the Resolve Through Sharing. Marcus also received a facilitator for Spirit of Care Giving at Baptist Medical Center. He and his wife, Shawnee, lives in Jacksonville, Florida with 3 daughters, Tashayla, Michaela, Ariana, and Anaya. Okay, we welcome you, Marcus Brown.
Thank y'all. Again, echoing what Joel said, thank y'all so much for allowing us to be here. one of the first things that we like to do when we come in and talk about grief is ask you, what is the hardest thing about grief that you can think of or dealing with right now? Because we're going to get to information that you have, but we want to hear, as Joel said, we want to learn from you all, because don't know everything about grief. But we want to hear from you and where you are, because the number one goal is, I feel like our jobs is that people are safe. When people feel safe, they will share with you and they will open up. If someone does not feel safe, they will look you right in the face and tell you, I'm fine, I'm okay. But if they feel safe, they will open up and tell you, hey, this is what I'm going through right now. This is what I'm feeling. When you mentioned about being broken and crushed in the scripture, that's how this grief feels when people are broken and crushed. And sometimes the hardest thing to do is to hear everything gonna be all right. Those are some hard words to swallow when you've lost something so precious to you and someone says, everything gonna be all right. Hold on to God's unchanging hand. But you are broken and torn on the inside. So in phrases or sentences, one word, a couple of words, what's the hardest thing about grief that you may be feeling, dealing with, or can think about right now? You can blurt it out, hands up. Go ahead. Yeah, those moments. Okay.
It's just those moments when you're going throughout your day,
yes, ma'am.
and then something, whether it's a thought or somebody might say something to you, whatever it is, and then it brings back
Yes, ma'am.
what or who you have lost, and
Yes, ma'am.
then,
Thank you.
you just break down.
Yes, ma'am.
from
Thank
there.
you. I'm going to ask Joel to share something that we and him talked about after we get the answers. I want you to hear from something that he just experienced just recently, but more. Everybody's going to get a chance, too. I want to hear from everybody, if you feel like it. You safe now?
I think it's the shock of it all.
The shock.
The shock.
Yes, ma'am.
You don't believe this happened just now,
Yes,
just then. You don't believe somebody gone.
Yeah.
And that's hard,
Yes, ma'am.
because you wish you could take back some minutes, some seconds, or what I could have did. And sometimes you just seen them
Yes.
hours ago. And it's the shock.
As a chaplain, one of the things that's extremely hard is when that shock happens with someone and we walk into the room with them and they actually do not believe their loved one is gone. And they really talk to that loved one like, get up, come on, get up. And we stand there knowing that they're not going to, but that shock takes over, and that's where they are. But the one thing I will never do, and I think that we'll never do, is steal that shock. That numbness, that shock, it's real. It's where you have to be. It's where you feel in that moment. I got here, and then I'm coming to you.
What I would say for me is what will never be.
Yeah.
Never be, because that individual's entire, what I thought was going to be that individual's life. No, not the child or my grandchild that would have come, not the vision of the success that person would have had, not the good or the bad. And I'll talk about this later, but my wife can listen to my son's voice videos.
You can.
I cannot.
Yeah, exactly. I love the fact that you see two people grieving the same thing, but different. I told Joel that how I think about it is grief is like a fingerprint. Every last one of us has a fingerprint, but our fingerprints are different. If we give our prints, if we do the print, is not the same. And so your grief has to be individual to you. It's the moment someone takes your grief. I was telling Joel that one of the things we did in the church just last week, we talked to someone and their sister had passed away. But if my sister passed away and I say to them, I know how you feel because my sister passed away, I have just stolen their grief because I've made it about me. And sometimes that happens so quickly, we don't mean to do it, but it just happens because we sometimes don't know what to say, which we're going to talk about some things, some keys, some things to help when someone's grieving, to allow them to mourn, because we're going to talk about grief and mourning and all of these things. Someone else.
Yes, feeling like you could have done more.
Yes.
And I told my mother this, I'm not a caregiver. you didn't raise me that way. I didn't pick those ways up. You have to tell me what's wrong. You have to tell me what you need, what you do, what I can do. And I guess she did her best at that, and I did my best at that.
Yes, ma'am.
But I felt like I should have done more. And those feelings come back often with me when when things pop up, you know, on Facebook or memories, and she's in them or whatever. And I just feel like I could have done more.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And see, these things are hard. That's why we want to hear from you all where you are, because I can't just tell you. I remember Charlie was telling me a didactic won't get you your answers if somebody just tells you this is what you got to do, and it's going to get to the first thing on your sheet. You see that there's stages that people have told you. How many have heard of the stages of grief? Everybody, there's a stage of grief. That means you're going to get here, and then you'll end up here. And that's not what grief is. Grief is like the second picture you see that is all over the place. One person told me, she said it's like a roller coaster that never stops. Some days you coast, some days you're going down that hill, and it hurts. Like you said, I don't want to hear the voice anymore. That's the way people mourn, because grief is what happens when you get that initial call, that initial shock. I still got you. But mourning is what happens, what you do with it actively. Grief is the shock, the call, the news. But the mourning happens afterwards. And if people aren't allowed to mourn, that's when it gets hard. Because they might not be able to mourn. No one has let them know that it's okay to cry hard in the corner by yourself. Because people are extroverts and introverts. Introverts are going to grieve differently than extroverts. I have a daughter who's an introvert. If she could live her life inside of a house, her whole life she would. But if she grieves, she might sit in a corner and face the wall because she don't want to talk to anybody. But I have a daughter that won't stop talking, even if you tell her to stop talking, because that's her way of getting it out. But they have to be able to have their fingerprint be theirs so they can grieve their own way. And when they're safe and people grieve, we get to what's called reorganization. That's when you live your life and you know that person, you remember them, you have those grief bursts and those times that I remember them, but it's hard, but you're still walking forward. Because steadfast doesn't mean you're going fast. Steadfast just means you're moving in this direction, maybe really slowly. And so, go ahead.
Yes, I was just saying, knowing that they will no longer be on this earth where I can see them, touch them, feel them, all that.
Yes.
And I am a Christian, and I believe every word that the Lord says, that we will see each other again.
Yeah.
But it's just that every day of knowing
My Lord.
they're not.
You,
That empty chair that's at the table.
when you said that, I talked to people that have been married for like 60 years, which are some of the hardest ones. When somebody's married 60, 70 years, and they said the hardest thing about the grief is the silence. They said the hardest thing they have to go through is the house don't make noise no more. There's no noises, any noises, bodily noises. They miss the fact that it's silent. And that's just what, because I'm a person like Joel, he walks along with people much longer than I do. My grief, when I'm in the hospital, it's kind of that shock and numbness. And then I kind of I'm not really with them anymore. But when we do teachings, I learn it is so different from someone that has to go through all of these ways, and then the anticipatory grief is coming. All of these things. And so anybody else about the hardest thing about grief? The hardest thing.
I guess when you're in a position where you've been a caregiver, professional caregiver, you've been at the bedside of others who've grieved, who've been sick, and then your own loved one, you seem to be able to help others, but you seem to have failed your own loved one.
See, you can't get any realer than that. That's a hard thing to do because we're chaplains. And I noticed the other day, I'll just say a couple of days ago, I go see my mom every Thursday because I would just hey, I'll call her. But I forgot how precious it is to see her. And the last time I saw her, I was like, man, my mom doesn't look like the mom when I was younger. And I was like, man, I'm not always going to have her with me. I see people go through things for a living, but I am not ready to not have her with me. And I'm telling you from somebody who sees grief, talks about grief, I am not ready. And so that is going to be something that grief is a hard topic that everybody knows, but nobody wants to talk about.
The thing not being able to share events with your loved ones. Like I have a grandson who's a high school senior. My mother would have loved that, but I can't share that with her.
Yeah.
The baseball games or the football, that's what's hard for me.
Yes,
And there are some days, my mother's been dead for quite a long time. Some days I just have to make myself get out of bed because I can't share stuff. What's happening to church? That's my part. That's what gets me.
Yeah.
Because we shared a lot of stuff together, and not being able to share those, that hurts.
Yes, and see, I was telling Joel, we went to a church just recently, and the pastor said, I honestly thought that grief was had an ending, and he would ask people, hey, why are you still grieving? It's been 10 years. But I was like, you're never going to stop grieving someone that you have loved, connected with, and just a part of your life, just the little things of sharing. And so that's why we always ask questions when we do these, because we want to hear where you all are. Even if you want to share, if you don't want to share, please feel safe at any time to raise your hand in this, because we want to hear from you, and we want to we'll give you some information, some things that we have learned, but also learning about you all will help us along this time that we talk. And Joel's going to come, after yours, Joel's going to come, and I want him to share with what he shared with me before coming in here, just about how it just pops up on you.
Yes, I think I shared this the last time, but maybe not as much in depth. But one of the things, I left home at 17, and I knew Mama as Mama. I really never got to know her as a person, as a lady, or just a regular person, because she was just Mama to me, and that's the relationship we had, because I was at that age and stayed away for like 42 years, and she would always say, like, it's time to come home. When are you coming home? And I came home, but I often wonder, was it too late? How much more could I have done? I mean, how much more, because we did so much together, and I took her, but I'm thinking, man, she wanted me to come home, and I didn't at that time. I mean, a few years later I did, but I still wonder about what I call those missed moments by me not coming when she was asking me to.
It's one of those things. How many have heard this phrase, survivor's guilt? When you survive and you're guilty that they're gone and you're here. That's real, and what happens when we talk to people is just surviving. Sometimes you remember, and man, I'm here and they're not. I can't touch them. I can't see them. And so these things, mourning is the thing that helps us get to reorganization. That's when we can live our lives knowing this one is gone, but I have not forgotten, and you will never stop grieving someone that you love until you leave. It will not stop. It won't stop, and it's okay, because if you mourn and you find safe places to mourn, you will be able to take those steps little by little. Now, complicated grief comes when we don't mourn and we keep it in here, or somebody takes that mourning and says, you should be done now. I need you to stop. You've just diminished my grief and the way that I mourn. And so always remember that. And so as we go, questions pop in your head, thoughts pop up, raise your hand and talk. That's what we're here for. And I want you to know this is safe. And so we're not going to fix anything, but we want to journey along with you. All right?
Thank you so much. Really appreciate hearing all of the personalized experiences of grief and the places where you all are at right now. I want to share 2 or 3 things, and then maybe Marcus has some more to share, but we can go back to some more questions. Someone who means a lot to me is a therapist and grief educator named Dr. Alan Wolfelt. Dr. Wolfelt is someone that Marcus and I have had the opportunity to train under and to listen to his approach and model of companioning, as he calls it, mourners. He is a prolific writer. He's written almost 100 books. That's hard for me to imagine. one of the books is called something about 365 days of grief. And so every day he has a reflection. So I just wanted to, they're very brief. I just wanted to read one of those because hearing all of your griefs is so, I heard your love. I heard your love for those people. So this is not today's reflection. This is from March 19th. So I'm going a few months backward. He begins every reflection with a quote. So here's the first quote. Grief is the last act of love we have to give to those we loved. Where there is deep grief, there was great love. And then he starts. Grief is the flip side of love. When those we love leave us behind, we go on loving. But now the love is made bittersweet by the fact that they are no longer physically here to receive it. I think I heard a couple of you guys say something right along those lines. What if we think of our grief as an act of love? After all, that's really what it is. Does that change how we feel about it? If we loved greatly, we will grieve deeply. That's the equation. Let's honor our special people who have died with grief and mourning that is as wide and as deep as our love for them still is. He ends every reflection with a little resolution. So the resolution is, I loved greatly, and now I grieve deeply. My grief is an act of love. So Marcus and I was just sharing something that happened to me, something I shared with a friend yesterday while we were out at lunch. And just a little bit of background about me and my journey to become a chaplain is 7 years ago, my wife gave birth to our firstborn child. But there were complications during the labor and delivery process. And my daughter had to be resuscitated as soon as she was born because her heart had stopped in the process of giving birth. And Rose is her name. That's why I said someone here has a beautiful name, named Rose. Rose only made it a few hours. And so that was the first time in my life that I had ever really suffered and that I tasted grief. That experience changed me as a person. I think when we grieve deeply, we become and are becoming different people. You're not the same exact person that you were before you lost that person, and maybe nor should you be. I think a lot of times grief is like, they split time in half based on when Jesus was born. Our lives sometimes get split in half. Everything that happened to me, I think about, this was before Rose, or this was after Rose. I don't know if you've had a similar experience, like this was before and this was after. So I had the experience a couple weeks ago. I've had this picture of Rose in my bedroom for probably 5 years. And so every day I see it. But there was one day a couple of weeks ago where I happened to look at it, and for whatever reason, whatever I was feeling that day, I just started weeping. And here it's been 7 years. This is not something that happens every day, but I felt like that river of grief, those feelings of deep loss and sadness and what ifs, that the 6 words touched me deeply because we had a whole nursery of things that were never used. And we have since had a new baby. So I have a 1-year-old. He's doing awesome, and that's been a part of my healing journey as well. But I think that river of grief, it's always there. I cringe when people talk about getting over or past grief because I think grief is something that you're doing well when you learn to live with it. When you become, Dr. Wolfeld often talks about becoming friends with your grief, and I don't necessarily like that language. I'm not friends with some disastrous thing that happened in my life, but I recognize that my feelings of grief are an extension of my love. And instead of avoiding them, like, some people, if I have a really hard time getting along with them, I might avoid them. Instead of avoiding my feelings of grief, when they come out, when I notice, hey, today something's different, I'm feeling something more, do I have the ability to move toward that, to give those feelings and that experience the attention that it deserves? I think you've all shared powerful feelings and wonderings. If only is one of those that I heard a couple of times. If only I had moved back sooner. If only, and I think you shared it, and if only. I think a lot of times our experience with those wonderings and questionings, because my wife and I went through something like that. We wondered, was there something we were supposed to do that we did not do? My wife especially really struggled with this. Guilt. I should have known. I had a bad feeling about this. I should have done this. I think that's a very brave thing to say, first of all. My experience is that when we have the courage to actually say something like that, a lot of times the people around us will kind of like, no, you did everything you could have done. You did great. And I think the reality is that expression, that response, while it comes out of a place of love because I want to affirm you, I think you did a great job, that doesn't actually help you. I think what might help more is, what did I wish I did differently? Maybe I could share that with somebody. For my case, I wish that my wife and I had said something, that we had stood up, that we had advocated for ourselves. I also know that I'm not a doctor. I was trusting the doctor because they have so much more wisdom and experience. So in my mind, I have two thoughts. One is that, I do wish, if only I had done something differently. My other thought is, maybe for me, that wasn't really my responsibility. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I could not have known that because I'd never gone through all the training. So I just want to say thank you for the people who have been brave to share about what is the biggest challenge that you are facing right now. And I hope that you, just like you would want a really good friend, maybe we've experienced people who have said stupid things to us as we're grieving, things that maybe were really well-intentioned and coming from a very kind and loving place, but they just did not help at all. And they made us want to just run the other way and say, I don't ever want you to talk to me again. Sometimes when we have those feelings inside of us that come up, like I did looking at the photograph of Rose a couple of weeks ago, will I treat myself like the friend that I want to have? I want to have a friend that says, tell me more about what you're experiencing. Tell me more about Rose. Tell me more about what you're feeling and what this has been like for you. And so my encouragement is, as you've just shared with us about your grief and your pain points, can you in some way be the friend to yourself that you need and listen to yourself? When your feelings are demanding attention, will you give them that attention? And so that's my encouragement just for the moment. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, continuing along with what Joel said, a lot of the times that we don't know how to mourn is because we haven't just asked that question of, hey, what do I want to do? Because someone usually comes along and they kind of tell us what to do. They mean well, but they kind of shift us into this is where we should go with your grief. And Jose, he's the chaplain that works with me as well. He told me that one of the hardest things for him is when you watch even the children having to grieve or children having to have loss. One of the kid came in and she had lost her brother, and she came in, the family was gathering around, the child was gone, and she said, am I a sister anymore? And the way that she cognitively understood, her brother's gone, does that change my identity? Because we become new once we lose someone. We have support groups at Baptist, and a lot of times the support groups, they'll share with us. And one of the ladies shared with us, she said, time don't even matter to me anymore. It's before my brother and after my brother. I don't even look at time the same way. and because her brother was lost in a different way, because some losses carry stigmas. And they stigmas if we took one training in Wisconsin and we talked to these group of people, and 2 of them had lost their kid in a car accident. And 1 lost her son to suicide. And both of them, all of them worked in the same place, and they came back to work, and everybody went to the people that lost their child from car accident. Nobody talked to her because of the stigma of, I don't know what to say, I don't want to say the wrong thing. But she told us, because we got a chance to ask questions, we were like, what do you want to say? Going with what Joel said, what do you want? She said, I want to talk about my son too. And so that's why telling stories is how we mourn. How we mourn may be we write them down. You don't have to share something with everybody, but you may want to write down how you're feeling. Keep it for you, tear it up, burn it, whatever you want to do with it, but letting out how you feel. I tell people all the time, tell stories about your loved one. Even the people that don't want to listen, still tell. Dr. Wolfelt, he told us a story. He said that what happened is we kind of shifted into the quickness in which we have funerals, wakes, funerals, then we gone. And he said back in the day, people would show up to your house, 30 people with 30 casseroles, and they would knock on the door, and then you had to get a chance to tell that story to 30 different people. That person that told that story 30 different times got to reorganization a little bit faster because they got a chance to share, to tell the story, and nobody fixed it. Nobody said, well, you know, God needed another angel. And while you're watching your child die, if somebody says that, we had a chaplain that we were learning together, and a mother had lost her child, and the chaplain came and put her hand on her shoulder and said, it's going to be okay. The mother just slowly turned and bit her in the hand, and she chomped down, and I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? But we learned a lesson together. I always give people space. When they're mourning, give them a day or two. You know, cards are good. People want, it's not bad, but sometimes it hurts so bad just to think about, to talk, to hear. And they have to have space to grieve in order to mourn properly. Mourning is so important that it's the thing that sometimes we're told, especially for sometimes it's men, we're told don't cry. Crying is tears of weakness, you know, or you've lost your faith. What I have learned over these 12 years is that mourning and worship can share the same space. I can worship God from my core, but be so hurt from mourning a loss of someone. They can share the same space. But sometimes we think, oh, well, no, you can't. You've cried long enough, Doc. That's too much crying. We have to let people mourn because mourning is how they get better. If you have any sickness and you take medicine, you want to get better. But the medicine of grief is not a seminar. It's what Joel said to say, hey, what do I want to do? Because we never think of the word self-care along with grief. They usually don't share the same space. Because you're like, self-care? No, I'm worried about me. I'm guilty and all of these things. But you got to be able to take care of yourself because the number one thing is, what do you want? And how many people ask you, what do you want, without telling you what you want? I want you to be able to grieve, but I kind of want you to do it a little quieter, or not right here, or not right now. Sometimes people need space to mourn wherever they are in that moment. It could be in the car. It could be during church, sitting on the back pew, and just mourn and be allowed to, because mourning is powerful. It's how we it's the difference between grief, because most of the times people think they're the same, grief and mourning. But we have to acknowledge the death. You know, we have to know that we're a new person. What's my new identity? Somebody tell me, you know, if you feel free, what's a new identity you noticed about yourself since your loss? What's a new identity that you've noticed that, hey, I'm not like this anymore, this is new? If you can, go ahead.
I have become more empathetic. I spent 27 years in the Navy, seen a lot of death, and experienced a lot of death in the family, but it was one of those, I had a friend of mine used to tell me that me and her husband were the same. He was in the Corps, that, you know, we got to die, and you move on. When my son passed, changed. that pain hit so hard that I know that I've changed. And I know that because of that pain I feel, because of that hurt, that loss, that I'm more empathetic with others, and I understand. You know, we sometimes as Christians, you know, we are quick to say, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. I don't know about you all, but Pastor Rock is still looking for the morning sometimes. Sometimes I live in that midnight hour. But I had someone, my mama in Christ, tell me as we were walking into a funeral home that you have to continue to walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And that has stuck with me. I know the song, but when she said it, she was telling me that you're going to go through this and you're going to have these feelings, but you got to continue to walk through. You have to continue to try to make it through. And that's how joy can come in the morning, when you continue to walk, continue to grow, continue to allow your faith to grow. I've become more faithful. And I believe that I was extremely faithful prior to. Afterwards, I can't depend on you, Marcus. I may love you, bro. I got to rock with God because that's all I got. All right? And yeah, you know, it's going to be all right. Well, I'd like to know when, because I'm pretty sure for me, the only way it can be all right, and I was going to say this at my time, before I sat right there, everything I thought was all right. But at some point, we're all going to have to sit on that front row. And when you sit on that front row, a change happens. I'll never be the same from that front row. My son passed on May 2nd, 2021. That's the first Sunday in May. The first Sunday in May for me has never, ever been the same. This past May, and I had to preach, and I preached through the tears. The first Sunday in July of 21, I stood right there in the center aisle, all the way in the back, and I cried the entire service because my wife had told me that how she missed my son and that we were here in church. For 2 months, I went into a different mode. You know that mode we go, I went in, I'm good. I work, do something, move, grow, do. That Sunday, I couldn't move. And I stood there the entire service. Reverend McGathy tried to call me, I can't come down there. I couldn't even sit on this side of the pulpit because of that seat. I could see me sitting in that seat. And so the change for me was I became more empathetic. I believe my faith grew, my trust grew, and it had to. Am I still a work in progress? Without a doubt. You know, without a doubt.
Yeah, new identity is one of the hardest things to both embrace and become. But allow yourself to become a new person. And what I mean by that is, what do you need to do with your morning? If somebody wants to say, hey, today, Dr. Warfield always says, sometimes all the strength you have is just to breathe in and out. That's the only thing you can do. Somebody's like, you want to say something, you want to do something? Only strength I have is just to breathe in and out. I'm paraphrasing a story he said about a blind boy that carried a flashlight, and he's carrying it through this village, and you're like, he's blind. Why does he have a flashlight? And he has this flashlight not because that he's watching where he's going, but so the people in the village might know, hey, this is where I am if y'all ever need to see me. And he likened that into grief, and that we see people grieve, they're carrying these flashlights around, and they're shining them, but don't go over and try to turn off their flashlight. Don't turn it off. Let them have it on, whatever that looks like, because some days they're not going to want to get up out of bed, and they want to just sit there. and look at the wall. And they wanted to text somebody and say, hey, I just don't feel like it today. Because the grief is hard. And the mourning, that's their mourning process. I want to always reiterate that mourning is individual and it is unique. You must let that be uniqueness be unto you. You have to be able to mourn how you mourn. Now, if he would have said, no, you coming up here, that wouldn't have been a good product. Because Joel's going to talk about the misconceptions, things that we've heard that haven't helped. We're going to talk about some of these misconceptions because I used to use them. In the beginning of my chaplaincy, I would tell people, you know what I mean, we can pray, let's pray, we're going to feel better and all of this. But as I've grown, I do less talking and I just be there. Go
ahead. Some of the changes that I seen when my son passed, all of a sudden, the next couple hours, days, I inadvertently became mean because reality had shook me. And I'm not nice no more. I'm not that yes, 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 it's okay, it's all right. Or get this, you can have that. I became to face people at real value. And I wasn't that nice person no more. Yeah, I believe in God, but I also know how you are and you are and you are, because I lost something I love, and I know y'all don't love me. And I began to tell people exactly how I saw them, and I destroyed people, and that wasn't the way to be. I would tell somebody how I actually felt about them, not knowing that I was destroying them at the same time. And I had to take it back and say, God, I don't want to be like that. I'm hurting people. Not rudely, but I'm actually telling people what I feel inside because something was taken away from me. And I said, God, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be ruthless. I want to be honest, but I want to be humble. And so I had to take it back a little bit. And I had to realize everybody is human and things like this do happen, whether by sickness, by accident, by suicide, these things happen. So I had to go within myself and say, God, take me, hold me, let me heal, not destroy. Let me love. Most of the people in this room right now help me to love because they love me and they know what I was going through all of a sudden. And I took that love to try to help people. So yeah, I'm still a yes, 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 but limitations, but yes, yeah.
I appreciate that because sometimes that we forget about that word whenever we're grieving, that anger that comes up. It is sometimes so hard to keep in here and inside because you're so angry. I heard a man tell me one time, he said that in times of peace, children bury their parents. In times of war, parents bury their children. And he said, son, we are at war because that's the pain that they feel. It's a war within them. I cannot imagine having to bury a child and that's why I'm learning to be more empathetic and not take where people is and like, hey, I know how you feel. One of the number one things before Joel comes and talks about these misconceptions is sometimes these misconceptions that people say, they hurt deeply. I had an educator that lost his wife in the middle of the night. She had an aneurysm and was gone when he woke up. Somebody sent him a card and said, hey, you'll find another wife. And they thought that it was good. But what he did was rip it up in so many different pieces because he said he needed to rip it up so small because he was so angry. Now, if that person was in the room with him, I'm afraid what would have happened. But anger is a real, honest feeling, and don't lean away from it. Sometimes you got to be, like I said at the beginning, I want people to be safe enough to be angry. Because sometimes they are just, this stuff you cannot prepare for loss. There is nothing 25 years in the military could not have prepared you. Nothing prepares you for losing someone that you love, and especially children. One of our colleagues, Fred Caldwell, he worked in the PICU for 12 years. And the PICU is a hard place to work in. But he worked there for 12 years, and he took another job, and he does something totally not that anymore. But somebody asked him one time after doing it so long, they said, Fred, what do you do at work? And he said, unfortunately, I work where hope dies. And that is hard to hear, but it was his reality, because your children are your hope. And if you watch that and have to go through that, the reason why we're asking you all questions, because we want you to not only ponder, but spread empathy to somebody else. When they have a loss, a parent that's lost a child, going to be better than a chaplain at times, because you're going to know what not to say. And sometimes I don't say a word. I'll sit in a room and just sit there. And then they'll thank you when you leave. They're like, thank you for being here. And I was like, I didn't say one word. But I was there, but I let them mourn. But those misconceptions, which Joe going to talk about, can get you pretty angry.
This is so challenging for me because as I hear so much and we got so many experiences, so many things come into my mind that I want to share, and I don't think we have time, and my brain doesn't work super well, so I can't even remember what you said that recalled that thought in my mind. So I'm really appreciative. One of the ways that I have been changed is that I have become passionate about supporting people who are bereaved. So I want to talk just a little bit this moment about what grief is, about the difference between grief and mourning, and about misconceptions of grief. And as I talk about that, I'm going to invite you guys to share with me maybe if you have experienced those misconceptions in your own life, maybe you believed them for a time, or maybe someone told you that. And also maybe to think about one or two of the unhelpful things that people have said to you as you're grieving, and just have the ability to share that in a space with no judgment, because sometimes those things are kind of hurtful, and it's hard to have grace and to see through that to the love that person does have for us. So I'm on the first page here at the very top. This is probably the biggest concept that I have learned. We've mentioned this guy's name, Dr. Alan Wolfelt. This is one of the biggest concepts I've learned from him, is the distinction between grief and mourning. In our culture, I think we use those interchangeably, but I think his distinction is helpful. So he says, and I agree from my experience, that grief is everything that we think and feel on the inside in a response to losing someone or something that we love. Grief is on the inside, but mourning is when we take what's inside and we bring it outside. It's grief that's gone public. It's sharing those feelings with somebody, whether that be writing those feelings and experiences down in a journal. Even that is a way of getting it outside of ourselves, or drawing a picture. That's a way of expressing and getting it outside of ourselves. Or hopefully we have people in our life who will listen to us and listen to those experiences. Telling the story of our loved one, telling about them, saying their name, showing a picture. These are ways of mourning and expressing what is the grief that's happening on the inside. So that distinction I have found personally very helpful, because sometimes I wonder, Joel, do you have grief that you're not mourning? And grief, I don't know about your guys' experience, but for me, if I experience some big feelings and pain, and I kind of walk away from them and try to bury them, they tend to just stay there. They don't go away, actually, and they'll come back, sometimes at inopportune moments. One of those feelings, and I would incorporate this into grief, if we talk about grief and mourning, you had the courage to share anger with us. And I'm not sure that you said that word specifically. That was something that I was hearing, and I think that Marcus was hearing as well, because he said that word. I've heard numerous examples of child loss. Child loss, I think, is an example of out of order grief. It's not supposed to happen that way, as Marcus said. Parents are not supposed to bury their children. I think one of the very natural byproducts of that is anger. What is anger? It's a feeling of protest that we experience when something that we love is taken away from us or threatened. My son is 13 months old. I can see anger at work in his life. When I take a toy from him, he gets really upset at me. He's not happy about that. We experience those same feelings of anger. And I so appreciated what you said. You recognize that this is something that I'm doing. And maybe you've heard the expression, hurting people hurt people. And you saw what was happening. And you decided to make a change. And I just want to affirm and applaud you for that. I want to share a little bit about misconceptions and myths about grief. This is on the last page there. You may not, some of these may not resonate with you. Some of these you may not have heard of, but some of them you may be very familiar with. The first is that grief and mourning are the same thing. I think we said, we tend to use those words interchangeably. Here's one. Tears are a sign of weakness. I think that, as was mentioned, I'm not sure who mentioned it, men especially are not permitted to cry in many of our cultures. I was reading this morning, John chapter 11, to me, one of the most powerful biblical statements about grief is the death of Jesus' dear friend Lazarus. And Jesus, knowing what he's about to do, knowing he's about to raise Lazarus from the dead, says that he was deeply touched in spirit and troubled, and he wept. He wept. Or mourning is a lack of faith. There's one of our fellow chaplains who I really respect uses a term called spiritual bypass. I don't know if you've heard of a coronary bypass. A spiritual bypass is when we express something, some question or feeling of anger to God. Why did this happen? Even Martha went to Jesus after that. She said, Lord, if only you had been there, my brother would not have died. And when we express something that's very real to us and we get a response that's kind of like a platitude of, hey, everything happens for a reason. I call that like a spiritual bypass. Like you just went right around that very real experience and feeling and powerful reality. And instead of encountering that reality, you just like went right around it. In Paul's letter to the Thessalonian church, he said that we as Christians do not mourn as the rest of mankind do, like without hope. What he didn't say is that we as Christians don't mourn. He said that we don't mourn in the same exact way that people who do not believe in the resurrection mourn. Because we do, as a part of our faith, believe that yes, in Christ, I will see this person again one day, but that doesn't mean that we don't mourn. But I think so much of our culture can be about being strong and displaying and demonstrating faith. Here's another one that I've heard kind of recently as a part of a support group that I facilitate. Focusing on our grief means that we're selfish. I think part of the natural process of grief, there's a word called convalescence. Going away, going alone, turning inward to yourself. That's something that really needs to happen. We've got to get through and get over our grief as soon as possible. Maybe no one has specifically said that explicitly, but that was kind of the impression that you got, that you felt. I will never forget a dear family member who I love told my wife after we had lost our daughter. This is in the immediate aftermath, maybe just a month or two down the road. She said, mourn for 3 months and then move on. And and I think, there are moments when it's hard to look past the words and see the heart of love in that person, and you try to be graceful to them. That bothered me. There's no shortcuts in this process. It takes the time that it takes, based on you, based on your relationship with that person, based on who they were, based on the circumstances of the loss. These are all unique, as Marcus said, part of your unique fingerprint of grief. Don't let anyone put a timeline on that process for you. I just shared that a couple weeks ago, 7 years after losing my daughter, I wept. Grief is not something that goes away. It's something that you learn to live with. But I will say, and because that might sound a little bit hopeless, the grief does, those feelings that are so intense and painful in the early days, as you do the work of giving them attention, the work of mourning, of sharing them, of expressing them, which that in itself is challenging and painful. It's called grief work for a reason. It's hard. But as you do the work of mourning, those feelings do soften over time. But occasionally you have these flare-ups. Sometimes they come out of nowhere, like when you were not expecting it at all, when something just triggers that. For me, it was looking at that picture. Maybe it's a smell. Maybe it's seeing a car that your loved one used to drive. Maybe it's who knows what it is. I love Dr. Wolfelt because he has a specific term for these moments called a grief burst. And I shared that river over time, that I think that the current of grief, it goes a little deeper and deeper in life. And hey, I'm able to function, I have a job, I can go about my business. And in general, I feel like a mostly whole and joyful person. But there are moments when that river of grief comes to the surface. And then what am I to do with that? What's my response to that? I think if I want a healthy, mature response to that, I pay attention to it. I allow myself to feel what I'm feeling, and that maybe I express that to someone that I love and trust, someone who's safe, as Marcus said, to share that with. Maybe that's in my relationship with God. Going back to the story of Lazarus, Martha, she left her house and went out to meet Jesus as he was on the way. I think there's something beautiful about that. Beautiful about taking that grief to Jesus. Jesus never tries to take her grief away. What he does do is he weeps with her. And then he says, your brother's going to rise again. And she said, I know in the last days, yes, he's going to rise again. And Jesus said, I am the resurrection. And I think, to me at least, what's powerful about that, Jesus doesn't say, it's going to be better one day. He doesn't say, just wait for heaven. He doesn't point to something else. He points to himself. I am the resurrection. Maybe what I don't need is answers. When we lose people, we have so many questions. God, if only you were there. If only you had done something. If only I had done something differently. For me, the biggest question in my relationship with God was, God, what does it mean that you are good? I've heard my whole life that you're good. What does it mean that you're good when you let this happen to me? And I will say for me, I just kept coming to God with that question. And so that's Martha. Mary, on the other hand, she had a very different way about her. She stayed in the house. When Martha left, Mary stayed in the house. And I don't know why she did that. Part of me wonders, maybe she wanted Jesus to come to her. Maybe she wasn't ready to talk. Maybe she wasn't ready to face the Lord because she felt so hurt. Maybe she did want him to come. And that's actually what ended up happening. Something that's been shared a couple times is about grieving the physical absence of a person. But I also want to say that a misconception might be that that's the only thing that we grieve, when it's not. Another one is that no one can help us with the grief that we feel. I find that there's a helpful distinction in breaking people into 3 categories. I love oversimplifications, and this is a big one. There's 3 kinds of people who we encounter in our grief. There's the kind that are kind of like neutral. You know, maybe they say, I'm so sorry. Hey, if you need me, just let me know. And then poof, like they're sort of gone. They didn't really help us, but they didn't hurt us, at least. They were just sort of neutral. Then there's the people who like hurt us because maybe they get so uncomfortable being around our grief that it produces a lot of difficult feelings for them. And so they try to like shut down our grief, perform that spiritual bypass surgery, give us that false hope. Someone told me after losing my daughter, you're going to have another one. Like, she didn't know that. So why should she ever say that to me? We did end up, by God's grace, having another child. So the neutral party, there's like the hurtful party that you're like, hey, and I just want to tell you, it's okay to put boundaries in place in your life while you're going through an intense grieving process, that you don't have to talk to that person all the time. You can identify, okay, this is not someone that I'm going to be, this is not a safe person. This is not someone that I'm going to share with. Maybe I'll still see them. Maybe I can't avoid them. Maybe they're in my family. But I'm just not going to go there with that person. And then there's the helpful people. In my experience, these are the people probably have gone through grief themselves, and they know the value of listening, as Marcus said. They know that God gave us 2 ears and just 1 mouth, and that they ask us questions. For me, I had to sort of educate my friends a little bit because they wanted to help, but they just weren't sure how. And so I said, it's okay if you talk to me. I actually love talking about the person that I lost. I love talking about her. And maybe that was the heart of a parent that wants to share their child with the world. And so I said, I think the misconception is that they didn't want to like bring her up and bring up those hard feelings. But the reality is that I was already thinking about her. And so it's helpful for me just to be able to talk. So that misconception is no one can help us with our grief. There are some people who do not help us, but there are some who do. Finally, a couple more. We've already talked about this. Once that our grief is reconciled, we're like done with grief and mourning. I don't think there's an end date in sight. Versus, we do learn to live with our grief. We learn to appreciate the person that we have become. While we would say, I wish I didn't have to become this person because I wish that this had never happened in the first place, I do recognize and acknowledge the ways that God has used that to change me. And I'm going to pay attention to those moments and those days when it's near the surface. Common days are anniversaries, birthdays, holidays. And it's amazing to me because even sometimes when we're not actively thinking about it, somehow our body remembers. Physiologically, we remember. and we might catch ourselves feeling sad. And if we stop and say, I wonder why I'm feeling sad, like I wonder why today is an off day, I think that implies judgment where I don't want to. I wonder why I'm feeling sad today. And you think, oh man, today is actually a special day. It's an anniversary or something like that. Marcus mentioned that grief and mourning, this is the most popular misconception that I'm familiar with, proceed in orderly stages. Hey, if I can recount them from memory, it's something like denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, or something like that. The 5 stages of grief that you hear about in TV shows and things like, hey, right now you must be in the stage of denial, or right now you must be in the stage of depression. And the reality is, like, it's such a mess. Grief is such a mess. It's not orderly. It's not linear. It's like cyclical, because you take 2 steps. When you take 1 step forward some days, and then the next day you take 2 steps back, and you're back in a place where you thought you had already graduated from. And another one that I would say, and this was sort of mentioned earlier, sometimes we give each other advice about how to deal with those intense feelings of grief. Hey, keep real busy, okay? Stay distracted. Find something else to do, work hard, work 12 hours a day, then go home and watch TV at night and just try to go to sleep. Try to avoid at all costs thinking about it. And I think there's a balance that we've got to strike between moving toward those feelings of grief that are demanding our attention and taking a break, because man, I can't stay there forever. I can't stay there all day, or I'm just going to be overwhelmed. So I think there's a healthy balance there. So my question, sorry, I talked a lot. My question to you is, have you encountered or experienced or heard or believed any of these misconceptions about grief? You can raise your hand if you. Yeah. Did you want to share that with us? Now that I'm coming here with the microphone?
I guess it also, for me, it was who I lost. Because I lost my dad, my brother, and then my mother. And so it was, probably more, and I was her primary caregiver. And I was just thinking about that coming in, that that being her primary caregiver and my sibling looking to me to take care of everything, and nobody wanted to own any of it. So I took on a lot more. So, just grieving in those moments of, why did I have to go through it alone? I felt like that's where I was going through it alone. And so, being able to have somebody, my other siblings that I could go to, was a little challenging for me. So yes, some of these times when, I was, at least I said this in the beginning, was just not necessarily thinking about it. And then all of a sudden, boom, something would happen and the tears would start to flow. And I'm like, okay, am I ever going to get past this? Am I ever going to be able to be forward moving and not let it consume me, is where I was.
Thank you so much. You said a number of things there that were really powerful. So I just want to highlight a couple of them. Can you repeat the people that you lost in quick?
My father, my brother, and my mother. My father's he got sick, and so his kind of moved quickly into his transition. My brother happened like I didn't expect it, and then my mother, hers happened, kind of gradually over time. She just kind of went through her stages of going through hers.
Right. Yeah, thank you. The way that you described it, it sounded like it happened in a relatively short period of time.
It seemed to me it was short,
Yeah.
but not necessarily. It was a couple of years in between all of them.
That's not a lot of time. That is a relatively short period of time. So there's a concept called loss overload, where, holy cow, you're just getting started grieving this person, mourning this person, and then you experience another loss, and then another one. That's an overwhelming experience, I imagine.
Recover from one and then another one hits. And that is, I really at some point thought it was going to take me out.
Yeah.
I was like, God, I just can't stand, so I really had to count on my faith and look at my faith and utilize my faith to help me get through because it was rough.
Yeah. I think part of the challenge, I'm guessing, is like grieving the specific people that you lost. While you lost them all in a short amount of time, each person, each relationship, I should say, demands its own mourning and grief. And when it's all there together, that's really challenging. So thank you. Did anyone else want to share? Yeah. Oh, thank you. Mm-hmm. Can you raise your hand?
My son died in October 2019, so it was right before the pandemic. And what a lot of people don't know is my son was autistic, and he'd been there all the way his life. He didn't start talking really good till he was 7 years old. So I took care of him for 33 years, and I went through the ASAP method after his death. It was like, get over it, whatever. And my father came to me, and he was like, well, at least you ain't got to make no more appointments no more, and at least you can relax.
Whenever we're tempted to say something that starts with "at least"
Yeah.
to someone who's grieving, we need to catch ourselves. You wish you could have made more appointments. Yeah. You wish you had 1,000 more appointments. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And you said you followed the ASAP method. How did that work out for you, the ASAP? It didn't, right? Yeah. 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 Absolutely. This, and Marcus, I'm going to hand the mic back over to you. You know, the last two people who've shared have really made me wonder about the part of the process. You know, there's on the first page it says the 6 needs of mourning. Marcus, is this something that you were about to get into? Because I don't want to steal your thunder. Okay, I'll just highlight the one. Number 4, develop a new self-identity. Who am I now? Who am I now that I've lost my child? Who am I now that I've lost both of my parents and my brother? What does that mean for me? Maybe your parents were like the anchor of your life, and who do you turn to when they're gone? Maybe your identity, of course it is that of a mother. And what does that mean for that identity in the aftermath of the loss? So, yeah.
Along those lines, one of the final things that we like to go through is let people know about mourning and the 6 needs, but also those that have caregived for people. Caregiver fatigue is real. Caregiver fatigue happens because you've just spent all of your energy caring for someone, and they're gone, and now you're tired, and you're looking for somebody to care for. You don't realize it doesn't just stop or turn off like a light switch. The caregiving will continue because you're going to turn it towards something else. And so caregiver fatigue is why we talk about self-care and how you have to look at yourself in this new identity and embrace the pain of these losses, because you have to look, what Joel said, you have to turn on you. You have to look into you and what you need in these times. Because one of the things I wanted to mention is that people will ask why. They will ask why, but I tell chaplains when we're training them, they're not talking to you. So when they ask why, they're not looking for your answer. Because if you can answer that question, then you're good. But they're asking the why because that's all they have. As you said, I have to turn to my faith. When Isaiah said he's a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, that's what he knows, that we're human. I'm not God. I don't, like you said it adequately, I can't count on you because you have finite in power. But I know if I can stay steadfast and safe, because safe is what we want you to get out of all of these things. I want you to find somewhere safe and be able to mourn, and therefore carry that on to another person. So we're trying to have mourning children and children and children share with people, hey, you might be going through, I'm not going to answer anything, I'm just going to sit beside you right here. And don't underestimate the power of a simple, I'm thinking about you. Because one person that we had in support group, she told us, she said, I remember every single person that reached out to me when her brother died. But she said, I also remembered every single person that didn't. She remembered every single person that did not. It's powerful, not to fix, but just to tell people, hey, I'm thinking about you. That's enough, because they may want to share and open up. They may not want to, but the opportunity is not to fix, to be safe, so you can get through these needs, because all of the needs are actions, because mourning is action. You've got to take mourning action your way. Not Marcus's way, not Joel, not anybody's way but yours. What do you want to do for mourning? So if you want to go to the beach, if you want to do rituals, rituals is another thing that people do. We had the first training we went to in Colorado. One man said he had 7 funerals for his wife. 7. And everybody in the class I was like 7. But he said I needed every last one of them to say goodbye to her, because he lost her tragically. Now, we would look at that, that's a little norm, but that's his mourning. And if people let him mourn, the way he was able to talk and teach and tell us things was because people let him mourn. Now, if somebody would have said, you're only allowed 1, what might have happened? And so acknowledging and going through remember the person who died, we go into telling those stories. And remember, too, ongoing support. Y'all do a great job here of supporting each other. And when we talk to Charlie, all the things you do together, that's wonderful. And carry that on to other people. Carry that on. It may be to strangers, because what I've realized is not a lot of people know how to let people mourn. Now, I've learned things. I've been around Joel a long time, but we've worked with each other, and there's things I'm going to learn from him, and I'm older than him. I mean, my team that I like is better than his, but I still learn from this man, because he cares for people differently than I do. So if I say, no, I know everything, then I'm going to miss out. But if I learn constantly, then I can be taught how sometimes 2 parents that lost a child might not mourn the same. That's what I've learned today. I've learned that today, because my limited knowledge is you both handle it the same, but it's not the same. And the more we learn from each other and allow people to mourn, then we will create a better society of mourners. And that's the goal, is that we just compile. Let's teach each other to mourn. Let people be angry. Let people be where they are so they can take those steadfast steps of reorganization. And reorganization is hard, but it is possible. Because I like what Joel said, that there is hope. We end our support groups not with just mourning, but with hope. There's hope, especially when you can trust others to not bypass your grief, but allow you to be in it and don't fix it. Whatever you do, don't fix anybody's grief. Don't tell them that it's too long or they're too much. Let them mourn and then be there. And they will appreciate you like you will not even understand. We tell residents, I tell residents sometimes you need some duct tape. You just slap it on the top of your mouth and you just sit there and you let that person pour their heart out without saying, well, here's your answer that you could do, because they're not looking for answers. They're just looking for ways to mourn. And how you mourn is unique to you. It is unique as your fingerprint, and so we want you to know that. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all. And now the final portion, is there any thoughts or questions or anything that we didn't cover that you might have that Joel and I can answer? We have 1 and then 2.
We did cover it, but it just hit me that my mother was the last of my identity. And what I mean is I knew and grew up with 3 out of 4 grandparents. I knew and grew up with parents. My mother was the last one of those to leave. I was no longer a daughter. I was no longer a granddaughter. I was a mother, but that's a different identity. And I had a hard time with that. And I think it's something that I felt, but I couldn't describe until this moment.
Yeah.
That I didn't know who I was at that point when my mother passed, because she was the last one that identified me as belonging to someone. A lot of things changed in my life at that time. My son was in high school, and when my mother passed, I stopped cooking.
Wow.
He's a fantastic cook and baker now, but maybe that wouldn't have happened if I didn't stop cooking. And I'm now feeling and seeing things that I kind of brushed off before, that I didn't think were related to the death of my mother, that I realize now really were. Yeah. And I almost didn't come to this. I came to support someone who always supports me in things I do. But I'm glad that I came, because I've learned a lot.
Amen.
Just thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and a new identity is something that you can embrace yourself, and one of the things he mentioned is about writing things down, and you take the time as your safety, and you write down, hey, what is my new identity now? And then you build upon that. I don't want to give you answers because I'm not going to, but you build upon the safety that you need to say, now, what's your name? Sylvia. Miss Sylvia? Miss Sylvia's new identity, and you write. You decide. No one else gets to decide. Nobody gets the pen. One of the things we talk about as chaplains is the danger we can have is tell people to get in the boat, and they take us where they want to go, but then we grab the oar and start steering. And so we want to make sure. I got Doc in the back, and then right over here. Okay.
Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. So you're saying that they don't recognize those anymore? Because some years ago, that's who it was the main thing.
It was. And I think that's why it's everywhere in our culture. I think she did a great work in introducing our culture to that concept of what is the process of that grief journey. I think the problems were she was working with a specific group of people when she wrote that study, which were cancer patients. And I believe they were advanced cancer patients. So I think she did a great job of getting the conversation started. But I think we've realized over time and experience and more research and more sharing that it's not as simple as that. I think there's still something to those concepts. Denial, Dr. Wolfelt says, thank God for denial. Sometimes we need that because it's a survival mechanism. But people's processes are not predictable, they're not linear, and they're not orderly. And I think we know that now.
I just want to say thank you all for being here today, because I realized that I still have some work to do, because I didn't know how I was feeling until you all started to ask questions. People started to talk about how they dealt with different things, and I thought I had to be the strong one, and that's another one of those myths and misconceptions. I just thought I had to be the strong one. I'm the youngest child in the family, but I had to be the strong one for everybody else. Everybody always comes to me for everything, and I'm just like, some days I want to just say, who do I go to? Who do I go to when I can't be strong anymore, when it hurts and things like that? So I just want to say thank you all for being here today. Thank you for Miss Charlie for heading up. She and my sister Cheryl, I call her my sister, sister, for doing this because I felt I needed it. I didn't know I needed it, but I did need it. So thank you.
Yeah, I think being strong too when you're an oldest. I'm married to an oldest, and then both her parents died, and she did everything, but I had to allow her time to be. And that's what I mean by you don't have to be strong. Some days is you don't have to be strong at all, and that's the answer, just simple as that. And it's because it's about you. And that's why when Joel was talking about turning, it's not turning on you to make you the goal, but that you need care too. Because caregiver fatigue is real, and you have to understand that you deserve care as well. Yeah.
I think it's almost a mute issue for me because I lost my whole, well, y'all know my family. I can just, it's a whole list of people, okay? But I also found for myself that you can still experience grief from a loss of a job, from relationships, from situations that you're in, and it can be just as just as devastating as if it were a person. And sometimes you don't know. I think I can comment on one of the other things you talked about. One of the roller coaster things. I went to, I had an appointment to go to the doctor at St. Vincent. I had never been back to St. Vincent. It had nothing to do with it after my dad had passed. And I could not find the place I was supposed to go to that doctor's office. And in the process of not finding it, I went like 2 or 3 different places, and that wasn't the right place. I grieved because at St. Vincent, the last thing they did was that they lost my dad, okay? When we got to the funeral home, I took the clothes for him to put on. He said, well, when was the last time he could wear these clothes? I said, last Sunday when he had them on, right? And I sat there, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried. That hurt. I was on your roller coaster thing, you know, where you don't know when it's going to hit and how it's going to hit. And it was like, he was where he was supposed to be, obviously, but they got the wrong person, right? But so that was over. But it was still that process. It's not just one grief, okay, one thing. It's all of it. And like she's saying, who do you go to when you just crazy, when you need to release it? Bye.
The number one thing that people ask him in his therapeutic counseling sessions is, am I going crazy? And so many people had said that to him, he decided to write a book, You're Not Crazy, You're Grieving. And I facilitated a support group on Wednesday of this week, and someone asked that to the group, am I crazy? And it turned out everybody else had the same experience, so she wasn't crazy, she was grieving.
Well, we want to... And one of the things that I know that we realize is same that you were saying, that you don't even realize that you need help, that you are grieving some of the things that you're doing is a part of your process. So I want to thank you guys for being on our panel today. Hopefully we can use your services again, that we can become a team, you know. So as we try to expand this, make sure that you tell people all about it. I'm just talking. So thank you. Okay, Joe and Reverend Rocker, can I move you guys? Yeah, I'm gonna just move you right here. right, now you see who's at our panel. They're very well known to St. Stephen. We have Jolita, and my cousin, Reverend Rocker. So we can start. You can start now.
So like I said, I'm not used to that over there at my church. Like I said earlier, May 2nd, 2021, 6:10 in the morning, my phone rings, and it's my son's fiance. That was the day that our lives changed. And so they wanted me to talk about how I have been dealing with grief and mourning since that time. And the first thing I have to tell you is that some of you all are the key. Some of you all are the reason that I made it. Some of the texts that I gotten, some of the hugs that I got, some of the dinner, taking us out to dinner, taking me out to hit some golf balls. Those were things that I needed that I didn't even know I needed. But what I believe what really helped me is that early on, and when I say early on, I really mean that night, as we held each other, my wife and I, we said that we absolutely cannot hold this in. And believe it or not, I'm an introvert, and I don't have an issue keeping to myself. But we made a promise right then and there that we would share our feelings. We grabbed my daughter, Stacy, who was like Diesel's twin, and said, we will talk. We will not hold it in. We will talk to each other. We will share, because it's important that we don't let this consume us in a negative way. And so that's what we've been doing. They can look at me and tell there's nothing, and they get me all the time because they know, and some of you all know, I keep my son's license on me. And most of the time when I preach, I have it with me. And it's at that moment when I take it out of my wallet that my daughter looks at me and she never takes her eyes off me. And I have to kind of give her, if she don't get the sign that I'm okay, she's on high alert. But I don't know what that's called. I just need that sometimes. I can still see my son when I look over here on September 18th, 2018, my initial sermon, he came in a little late and he walked down the third row because he was working. But he came. I said earlier, it's difficult for me to listen to his voice. It's not that I can't or won't. Well, I guess it is that I won't because it's difficult. My wife, on the other hand, she loves to listen to his voice. I have a teddy bear with his voice in my office. I can't do that, okay? But for her, she loves it. For my daughter, she loves it. She looks at videos of him. I can't do any of that. I have his picture. I'm good. All right, and maybe that's because he was my road dog, and most of the time, he sat there and he went to sleep while I did all the driving. Maybe that's it. But communication with your loved one, I say I'm an introvert and I can hold it in, but I didn't hold that in. And I thank God that I did not hold that in, because had I held that in, I don't know if I would have made it. I don't know if I would have been able to walk the path that I'm on right now if I had held that in, if we didn't talk about it. And sometimes when we talk about it, the truth of the matter, baby, is I don't want to, but I know that you need to. And so I allow you to speak about it, to speak about D. All the while I go, I don't want to talk about it. And you all said, tell the story of his life. That's her. She loves to tell people about the big fella. I just don't. I don't know whether, maybe I hadn't had that opportunity yet. I don't know. But it's easier for me to deal with it just by holding him in my wallet, holding that driver's license in my wallet. Even talking to the picture that I keep of him on my dashboard in my car, or the one on my desk. That's how I have been able to cope with it. But I spoke about how it changed me. It not only changed me, it changed my wife and I. It changed our relationship. Thank God, because I've heard this before, that it didn't change our relationship for the negative. It drew us closer. We drew closer to each other as we drew closer in our faith. Because sometimes these things, this trauma separates people when they go off and say, well, I have to deal with it my way, and this person has to deal with it their way, and they grow apart. I thank God every day, and I thank God for you all that we grew closer during this time, and we continue to grow closer because it's still continuous. The last time we heard his favorite song, Order My Steps, was right here. And every time we hear it, it never fails that we look at each other and, we cry. And I'm not that guy. I don't have a problem. Well, I'm not that guy now. I don't have a problem crying. If you see me crying, I'm just a ball of emotions now at this stage in my life where I'm going to cry. If it hit me, I'm going to cry. And it doesn't even have to be about my son. If you start crying, I'm going to start crying. All right? I mean, that's just where I am. That's what God has done in my life. And I'm glad for it, because for so long I was such a tough guy, such the strong one, that I didn't realize I was actually weak. But now I've grown and matured and become stronger. I even learned something else. That October of 21, my daughter had a miscarriage. In my grieving process, I was only thinking about my son. And as I had enrolled in seminary, I realized, we were talking, that I was not allowing my daughter to grieve her personal loss. Because I said, you're going to be okay. My thought process was the child isn't here. Not understanding that she had that grief no matter how long that pregnancy lasted. It didn't matter. She had to deal with that on top of her brother. And I was going to get to you. So that was something, and again, that's where that, for me, my empathy has just grown and increased to where I understand some pain. My wife lost her father in July, and then your sister in September of the same year, and nephew in November, December. 2021 was tough, to say the least. This is what I tell you, we're still here. Okay, we're still here. We're still walking, we're still talking, we're still praying, we're still praising, we're still here. And we're still together doing what we love to do. Let me tell you, you all know this woman here, the one that when we were here, that said, God called you, he didn't call me. Y'all remember? Let me tell you something. I have to remind her every now and then, you know, like I'm the pastor. You know, that's me. But that's because of what and how we grew during that time, during these past 5 years. And you're right, it comes up the most inopportune time. Yes, Lady Rocker, you may.
I just want to make you guys, it's funny. We were at Bible study last month.
Okay, yeah.
Last month, we were at Bible study.
Yeah.
The first Wednesday in last month. What was last month?
July.
Thank you. I got a call. My uncle passed. We're in Bible study. So I'm going crazy. The following Wednesday, we're in Bible study. I get a call that my sister-in-law just dropped dead. The third Wednesday, I wasn't going to Bible study. But I had to go because I had to be with him, but I cut my phone off. Nobody died, thank you, Lord. But that was, yeah. I'm like asking God, can you just stop? 21 was it for me. I just can't go through it no more.
So for us, and for me, how I've been dealing with it is the fact that I have an extremely strong support system that includes you all, because every single day I get a text. Every day I get a text. I don't respond, but I get a text. I know that when I've walked in this church and someone has said, how you doing? You okay? Come give me a hug. I know that you all know, Sister West, that hug is not just for you, that it's for me. I understand that. And cuz, you know I know. You were there with me. So having that strong support system and allowing someone to help you, finding that safe space. And I did have an at least. All right, I had an at least where someone told me, at least you had him 26 years. I lost mine at 12. I just hung up the phone because that was like 2 days after, and I really wanted to say something, but, you know, yeah. But thank you, Joe. You know, I can talk about that big, see, I can't listen to him, but I can talk about it.
Well, good afternoon, and I'm going to remain seated, if that's okay with everyone. When Charlie asked me about doing this, I was like, well, I have no idea, and I still have no idea what I'm supposed to say. Looking at the topic, becoming whole while grieving, I said, well, I'm not whole yet, so what am I going to say? And one of the main things was the diagram, the linear dealing with grief, and then the little scramble thing. That was my thing. I say I am deep in the scramble still. My mother passed 8 years ago, and I'm still in the scramble. I was her primary caregiver for the last 5 years that she was here, and maybe prior to probably another 5 before that, before she became totally dependent on me. And that was a process. I have no children. I had no idea what it was like to have someone totally dependent on me. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? You know, and gradually that's what it became. So that was a new experience for me. She suffered from dementia along with a plethora of other situations. And during that process, it's twofold. I grieved my mother as I knew her. We called her Mimi. I grieved Mimi while she was still here, because she gradually became someone totally different that I didn't recognize, who I didn't want to recognize, who I didn't want to know. And that was tough, just a daily thing. And I grieved who she was. I grieved the person that raised me. I grieved the person who was my superwoman, who knew everything, who was the strongest person I knew, who, just was everything. And to watch her become almost just a shell. And then when she did pass, I grieved that person, who I then called my ladybug. And she was in a state where she could no longer communicate really with her eyes. She couldn't speak. She couldn't do a lot of things. So I did all of the talking, which was also a growing process, because I don't do a lot of talking, and I didn't do a lot of talking. She talked all the time. And because some way, somehow, we ended up being just the two of us, and I don't know how that happened. I became the primary caregiver. I became her roommate, so to speak, and she would always get on me about not talking and talking to her. And she and my sisters and even my brother there, they talked all the time, just talking about everything. And I was like, well, if you ask me a question, I answer it. I'm not long on conversation sometimes. So it was so funny when she couldn't talk. Then I used to mess with her. I said, boy, you can't talk now. I would joke with her and try to tease with her to keep her in the present. I said, boy, I know you're having a fit. You can't talk. You can't pick up the phone and call anybody. And but that allowed me to do the talking and speak to her like I never had before. And while it was the absolute hardest thing I've ever experienced in my life, it was also the very best experience that I had. To be able to have that time with her, just me and her for the most part, to get to know her, even though she wasn't herself anymore. Somehow, God worked that out where I still felt like I was closer to her than I'd ever been. And I appreciate that time. I hate that time, but also loved that time. And I did a lot of things, even speaking of what Ms. Ebron talked about. It seemed like the whole time I was trying to figure out how to make her better, as if I were a doctor, like I could just find what it is that made her click, tell the doctors, no, not that, do this. And I spent so much time and so much effort trying to figure out to make her better. I needed her to talk to me again. I needed her to say what she was thinking. I needed her to tell me what's wrong, because she could not even express if she was hurting, if she was going through anything. It was just almost unbearable. And I needed that. And I'm like, okay, can she just come back for a little while, God, just to tell me a few things, then I know what to do, how to proceed. But of course that did not come. And I had help. My sister, came over in the evenings after she worked. I had a person who I hired to come in, but I was there. I stopped working so I could be there. I felt like she needed somebody to be there 24/7. So I stopped working those last 5 years, and I spent it with her, along with trying to figure out how to make her better. But during that whole process, it was heavy, because I'm missing what I needed her to do. We no longer came to church, and anybody who knows her and remembers her, this was her place. This is where she thrived, and just was 100%. And she got to the point where she didn't want to come anymore, even though she could. And at the same time, I was like, okay, good, because it was a struggle to get her here, to get her here in her state. But she didn't want to come anymore, and I didn't understand why. And I realized that, in my effort to get her to do things, to come to church, to walk, to try to practice the things that the therapist had her to practice that she didn't want to do, and how she stopped talking because she was so cognizant of the fact that she may say the wrong thing because of her because of the state stroke she had gone through and aphasia and everything. And she knew it's almost like she can predict it's not going to be right. And I was like, well, say it anyway. Just talk anyway. And we struggled through that. And I get frustrated. I get, very upset, with her. But one way that I went through that particular grieving process is to constantly remind myself that it was harder on her than it was on me. To put her first, where I probably never had. She had always put me first, being her child. But to always remind myself, okay, I'm frustrated because she won't move, won't try. She's frustrated because she cannot do and function as she always had. And I knew that, I knew, because I knew who she was, I knew that probably bothered her more than anything, because she was always up front in charge, telling everybody what to do and making sure everything was in order. And that was just her personality. And it was just so different. But at the same time, we grew closer. We sing, we pray, and we watch TV shows, and just a lot of things that we had not done, and the connection grew stronger and stronger. So when she did pass, I was almost conflicted. I'm like, okay, who am I mourning? Am I mourning my ladybug, who I had been with the last 5 years, or my mother, who I had been with the 55 years prior to that? And so even with the scramble thing, that's really when it come into play. I'm like, well, sometimes I can't remember her from before. Sometimes I might walk around and say, I can't remember her walking. I have lots of recordings of her that I don't want to listen to. Sometimes they come up, and I'll listen to them, and I'm glad I did. I had recordings where she was making progress with her therapy and different things, and I may watch that, and recordings of just her talking when she was talking, and that I've shared with family. And it helps me just be in a comfortable place. The tears don't come, and I have this thing, and you say you cry all the time. I don't, because I have this fear that if I allow myself to cry, I won't ever stop. And, that's not just with her, but with everything compounded. My father passing, everything, as Reverend Jackson said, when you mourn over lots of things that you lose or come in contact with. And that's how I handle it. I stay busy. People tell me all the time, that I'm always working and always doing things. I'm like, okay, yeah, because if I stop, I don't know what'll happen. And I guess that's the thing, feeling like I'll lose control. And that may or may not be good. I don't know. From sitting here listening to the chaplains, that may not be good, but that is how I've been able to cope, how I'm able to sit here now, how I can wake up some days and say, wow, I'm still here when I didn't think I would be. With both parents gone, feeling like an orphan. My sister argues that we're not orphans. I say, we are, because we don't have our parents. But we go back and forth on that. But, my making it through the maze, and I'm, like I say, I'm in the middle of it. But, of course, with my faith, with the Lord, and a lot of times I'm still having many, many questions for him and many, many grievances with him, with this church family. I love you all, and I appreciate all the love that you all have given and shown. And we'll just keep going through this maze together, all of us, the scramble. That's what I like to call it. We'll just keep going through it together and holding each other up. And hopefully something I've said is a blessing. It helped us, but it's definitely helped me. And I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
We want to thank you so much. I know how difficult that must have been to share without the tears. I can ever talk to my mom without tears. You two gentlemen, we would like for you to have the final words. Can we get you to come up and leave us with some final words?
May the Lord watch. No, but thank you for your stories. I always like the uniqueness that we hear and we learn from people about. You said that that's your way. You don't want to cry. Don't, because that's your fingerprint. And you know, I'm telling you now, I borrow things that I see and learn, but when you had the license in your pocket, I told someone during the grief support group that if somebody wants to keep something from their loved one, I ask two questions. Is it hurting you, and is it helping them? And if that's the answer, let them keep it. So I thank you all for your time. Thank you so much, Charlie. We hope to do more and more. I'll say a benediction, and then I'll turn it over to you. Eternal Father, we thank you for this time. We thank you for grieving hearts and those that are grieving in this moment, that you give them safe places to be. Thank you for hearts that grieve, that you know that your shoulders can handle. And you take everything, even the things not said, and we give them to you and hold them in the palm of your hand as you keep us, guide us. Thank you for your grace and your mercy. In Jesus' name I pray by faith this day. Amen.
Okay. We'd like to thank everyone for coming out today. I hope this was beneficial to you in some way, shape, or form. And know that the Journey Grief Ministry is available to you at any time for a conversation, for presence, and for support. We have snack packs in the back for you since you came during your lunchtime, and water. So if you'll go through that door, there'll be someone there to serve you. Thank you again.